So let's talk about a man in jail. A man in jail that would be commonly known in any other circle as a Pookie. So understand that this is in reference to someone whose society would prefer that you look down on, but even that is now in question. As again, we have to somehow balance this understanding. Either society wants to look down on black men and you can rise above that, or society is going to look at all black men the same way regardless. Well, this content is in reference to the understanding that society is going to look at black men the same way regardless. A man who would be considered by many, by most, to be a Pookie was just elected to a political office. And it's not a loophole. It's not anything that's going to be taken back. This is the way it works now in DC. They are attempting to make sure everyone has a voice, right, in this system. Well, it's ironic that black men are ignored, downplayed, and belittled by other black men, while the system itself is putting black men in positions where they can change things, even if it's something small. And so you think about that and put that in the grand scheme. So a black man who is a Pookie, who has been incarcerated for 26 years, can get an elected office the same way a black man who has never been in trouble can. See, this is the entire reason why the educated lame hates the Pookie.
The D.C. jail sits across from a vibrant community in southeast Washington, the road between them separating them in more ways than one. Washington, D.C. is made up of 8 wards, each ward further divided into advisory neighborhood commissions and single-member districts. Today, one of those communities will elect its first ever commissioner. The 5 candidates all locked up at the D.C. jail.
We can literally change the world from the inside out. We just need an opportunity to be able to sit down and express ourselves.
I believe the district is suffering from a lack of love.
I just want to bring, you know what I'm saying, my wisdom, my heart, to do what I can for my Washingtonians.
I pray that I affect someone in a positive way.
To learn more about the Advisory Neighborhood Commission and the role of a commissioner, we spoke with the D.C. Board of Elections.
The Advisory Neighborhood Commissions are really a very granular community level activity, and it's an opportunity for every citizen to have a very direct say in the affairs that are taking place in their city. And so they're able to amplify any concerns that they may have beyond quite literally the walls of the jail.
In 2019, the D.C. Council passed the Restore the Vote Act, paving the way for today's election and tomorrow's winner.
D.C. residents anywhere in the prison system who are convicted of either a felony or misdemeanor have the ability to cast a ballot. So it really brought to bear the opportunity that was open for this seat for a resident of D.C. jail to serve in the ANC.
And as a true content creator, I'm only here to try to close the gap rather than widen it. And it just needs to be understood that society will never view these want to be educated lames as an educated lame that's more important than the Pookie. It's just not how it works. Because society is not going to go out and try to find educated lames to fill these positions. They'll just get a Pookie to do it. And it's silly of us to view any of these men as Pookies and Ray Rays, as they are incarcerated. They have broken the law, but society is not calling them that because, well, now society had wrote them off, right? They're in prison. But then even when they come back as a candidate, society is not pushing back. I don't see a loud effort to stop him, and nor should there be. But let the record show this was a man who was locked up for 26 years. For all intents and purposes here on YouTube, one would say that he ruined his life and his community, yet he's in an elected role. The sad part is, black people won't have the discussion about how he got to that role, and I know why.
The community's commissioner's office has remained vacant since its creation in 2011. It represents the D.C. jail, the Harriet Tubman Women's Shelter, and a nearby Metro stop and apartment community, a new group of people living in the neighborhood who presented a welcomed challenge for the candidates.
The first way it has to begin with first seeing each other as neighbors. I think that's the biggest curve for us. And quite frankly, being able to run as a candidate who's currently incarcerated, that changed the narrative to seeing that everyone, whether they are detained or not, are actually residents of the District of Columbia.
For more than a year, inmates at the jail were under lockdown for 23 hours a day due to the pandemic, conditions that several candidates called out.
The laws and things that happen for individuals are draconian now. You know, the type of pressures and the type of incarceration that individuals are going through right now is just unimaginable.
An inmate at the D.C. jail will be elected commissioner today, and regardless of who he is, the message to the incarcerated community remains the same.
No matter the circumstances, the crises, the dilemmas that you are in, that you can always think beyond the prison fence. Success should not be measured by how a person making it like. Success should be measured by the obstacles and burdens we overcome.
You know, this is a wild story when you think about it. People in jail fighting for the rights and the ability to operate in a community that they don't have access to. This is a man that's almost 30 years in, 3 decades behind bars. And this election included other black men that wanted to step up and try to make a difference outside the jail as an elected official. See, it's clear to me that when given an opportunity, black men will do something with it. Unfortunately, the Pookie is not given this opportunity until he goes to jail. And I think that society is catching up and starting to understand that the Pookie and Ray Ray game is still going over people's heads. Society's catching up to the fact that nobody makes that difference for real. Nobody lives that difference for real. But we're so separated in thought, segregated in desires, that any group of people can play on it. And I think they started to realize that in the upper echelons of society. They see it. This Pookie and Ray Ray division in our community that openly plays itself out, whether you're saying Pookies and Ray Rays, or you're saying the N-word and don't call me that, or any of those things, understand. These are the things that have plagued our community for the longest. When in reality, again, like I said, they look at all of us as the same. They look at all of us as Pookies and Ray Rays. And they'll give Pookie and Ray Ray the same opportunity that they'll give the black man who's never been in trouble. I mean, just think about it. You're in jail making a change for the outside.
1.3 million people are in prisons across America. A highly disproportionate number are Black and Latinx men. Criminal justice reformers say that their voices and the promise of their lives have been sidelined for far too long. But now one convicted felon in the nation's capital is fighting back from the inside, showing the power of rehabilitation and making political history in the process. Here's our Devin Dwyer.
From his cell block inside D.C. jail, Joel Castone is forging a new path to redemption.
One of my primary jobs is not only mentoring, but also being able to give you all wholesome content. Money coming in.
He teaches economics, leads Christian worship, and mentors dozens of fellow inmates in a program he helped create. And this spring, he turned to politics.
Who are your constituents? Who are the people that you're representing?
Yes, my constituents, first and foremost, the largest voting bloc of my constituents are incarcerated people.
After 27 years locked up for murder as a teenager, Castone launched a campaign for a seat on D.C.'s Advisory Neighborhood Commission and won, becoming the first person in the nation's capital to win election while incarcerated.
Had you ever voted before?
I never voted before.
So you were running for office and you had never even participated in the democratic process before.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing and how you can say, I want to be a part of something, but because the laws have prevented you, these barriers in place, and now these barriers are removed. So what we're doing here in D.C., we're actually setting the standard for the nation.
And you dressed the part.
I will be your biggest advocate.
His election is pushing the boundaries of voting rights after D.C. last year joined just Maine and Vermont in allowing felons to cast ballots and run for office from behind bars.
Most countries in the world, unlike the U.S., allow people to vote while they're incarcerated. In some countries, they actually bring the ballots to the prisons, and others they allow it by absentee. In other words, in most places, you don't lose your humanity, you don't lose your civil rights, social rights, political rights when you're incarcerated.
Commissioner Castone says his election shows the power of a second chance. In 1994, it was here in Southeast D.C. that as a teenager swept up in a culture of drugs and guns, Castone was arrested and later convicted in the shooting death of another young black man.
Wow, you know, I just wanted to be understood that the greater society is not holding Pookie and Ray Ray as accountable as one would think. As long as Pookie and Ray Ray can obtain the same government positions that a person who has never broken the law can, well, Pookie and Ray Ray are right there on par with you. You educated lames. They will claim that they're not respected within the black community. But what they fail to realize is that it's the greater society, the dominant culture, that does not respect them. Blaming the black community is just something that they've been able to do for a long time. But let the record show it's not the black community at all. You sound like a fool blaming the black community when the dominant culture has always dictated it, and once again they're dictating it by elevating the Pookie to the position where he's right next to the educated lame. So why would anyone feel like they're better? Why would an educated lame look over at a Pookie and claim he's better when society tells you that you're equal?
I was heartbroken. I know that.
Delonte Uzzle, Castone's cousin and best friend, says the tragedy of that day shows just how unforgiving life on the streets could be.
You could get hurt walking to the store. If Joel was fighting, we had to fight. If I was fighting, they had to fight.
How have you noticed Joel change?
He's always been that guy since I can remember always like the best reading groups, always been smart.
Were you shocked when he was elected as a commissioner in D.C.?
I was shocked, but it wasn't surprised. That's just always been him.
The family of the victim in Castone's case has given its full endorsement in a statement to ABC News saying, "We believe in forgiveness and we hope Joel will do good work in the community."
As a teenager, I was once a drug dealer myself. I was once a gunman myself as a teenager, and I paid a huge penalty for that. That's my incarceration. But throughout my incarceration, the best advice my queen gave me was find God, and I sought God.
His queen is his mother, still a guiding light for Castone as he embarks on a 2-year term to represent residents in one of the poorest parts of the city.
Maybe he's going to take that experience and share how he got through it, and so others won't have to. That would be good.
Some people are going to look at this with disdain, but a lot of people are going to think this is somebody who's really taking a step in the right direction.
His district includes D.C.'s jail, a nearby women's shelter, and this luxury apartment complex he's never seen.
How can you represent a group of people, a community, when you're cut off from a big segment of that community?
I would definitely answer that question by saying something no one expected, the global pandemic. A lot of meetings, a lot of engagement has taken place over Zoom. So now as an ANC commissioner, one of the things I do have access to is a computer.
So you're Zooming from inside this cell block?
I'm Zooming from the inside.
You have an office inside
I'm inside the
block.
office. Yes, I do, yes.
You oversee everything from liquor license approvals to sidewalk repair to public safety. Can you credibly advocate for public safety from in here?
I can, because those matters are matters that matters to my constituents. And so it behooves me to educate myself.
Joel Castone has probably more than any person in the country that I've heard of. He has the right to redeem himself and to have another chance.
Georgetown professor Mark Howard has taught Castone and encouraged him to run for commissioner.
And look who is elevating him to this level of greatness. It's not his own brothers. It's not people that look like him. No, it's the same people who told him he was a criminal in the first place. And so understand that black media calling black men Pookies and Ray Rays makes no sense, because they can be rescued by the same group of men that put them in this position in the first place. Meanwhile, you'll be sitting back talking about how Pookie and Ray Ray always get the women, but you won't acknowledge how Pookie and Ray Ray always get the benefit of the doubt in white society, which is why we've seen them run amok throughout their communities. Well, now we're talking about Pookie and Ray Ray, who's been incarcerated for almost 3 decades, yet now holds a government role, an actual position within the government.
He calls him a model for the nation.
He's just so bright, outgoing, positive, inspirational to everyone around him. He represents not only the people in his district, but he represents all incarcerated people by showing what they're capable of.
Castone has taught himself Arabic and Mandarin, studies the Bible in French and Spanish, and has published a curriculum of books to help inmates learn the basics of investments and savings.
We want people on the inside thinking like citizens, and it seems oxymoronic, right? However, if we can get them thinking this way while they're in the inside, the overarching goal is that will be the mindset on the outside. So we're changing the narrative.
Later this year, he expects to start his next chapter on parole. Living in the district he'll represent as commissioner while chasing his passion for entrepreneurship.
Just taking the spotlight off me for a second, I think all lives matter, all voices matter, everyone's voice matters. And I think that when you look at a story like mine, oftentimes we would just cast off individuals who are inside of carceral spaces and think that he or she does not have a value. I believe that my story demonstrates that, yes, we do have value.
Seeking redemption through politics and public service, and hoping to restore faith in life after prison. For ABC News, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington.
Giving a lot of people hope and purpose. Our thanks to Devin for bringing us that story.
So yeah, it's one thing to argue in a conversation with someone who just simply doesn't understand your point. And then it's a whole nother point to be able to come back and make the video showing once again the actual point you had. And so I need you to walk away from this understanding that any man that looks like me can be plucked up to the greatest position in Black leadership, to positions in the Black community where they'll be respected if and only if the dominant society opens up a way for that to happen, and then Black men walk through that door. See, I'm not here to say he shouldn't have went and won that election, or that these 5 Black men who ran for the position itself shouldn't have been running. I just need us all to remember that whether these men being incarcerated or being free, understand the point. Society does not view them much different than you, to the point where they have them operating on Zoom rooms while dealing with community affairs as a local official. Like I say, I ain't here to knock him at all. Shout out to him. Shout out to his office inside the prison when he's doing meetings with other elected officials on Zoom and he at the prison. Yeah, I'm cool with it. Are you?